Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. I'm your host, Francis Tapon. In this episode, I interview Mark Joseph, who did a documentary on the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. This is the famous trail that goes across northern Spain. And he did it, well, with his father's ashes. And this was a very poignant trip for him and a very emotional trip for him. And he is having a Kickstarter to help raise money to do the finishing touches on this dramatic film that captures El Camino de Santiago in its beauty, as well as a story that goes along with it. I talked to him about the making of the movie and what were some of the challenges that he faced. I hope that you enjoy it. And don't forget to go to WanderLearn.com to put your comments, and go to MuxiaFilm.com, which is MUXIA film.com. Enjoy. Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. This is Francis Tapon. I am here with Mark Joseph and Ariel Jonotan Fernadez. Is that I pronounced that correctly?
Good. That's good. Yeah, Francis.
And tell me, guys, where you are right now.
We are in Cochabamba, Bolivia.
Bolivia, one of the countries I haven't been to in South America. I'm very jealous. And both of you kind of met through a near fatal car accident that kind of brought you together, and you guys are both cousins.
Yes.
And eventually led you to El Camino de Santiago de Compostela, which is the long route that goes across northern Spain, and eventually made you produce a documentary, which you're going to be launching a Kickstarter. This is a lot that we want to cover, talk about. So I want to focus on El Camino de Santiago, but let's first talk a little bit about your background and how you guys as cousins met. Introduce yourselves. Mark, I'll start with you.
Yes. So I had an accident in April of 2015, near fatal accident. And that accident basically went and did some pretty severe damage to a foot, which caused me to learn how to walk again.
This was an automobile accident.
Yes.
And where was it?
It was heading south on a highway in Indiana. And there was a young man driving north who ended up having a seizure while driving.
This was in Bolivia?
No, this was in Indiana.
Oh, Indiana. Okay, I didn't hear that.
Yes, it's Indiana. And he ended up crossing lanes into the southbound lane. I was coming out of a business meeting with a client, and we basically, close to full throttle, went nose to nose, and we both survived, thank God.
What speed, approximately?
I think by the time we were breaking down, we were probably around the 50-mile-an-hour mark, but still,
okay, good.
We were probably traveling around 65, 70 on either side. He had slowed down. He had no really control because he was in the middle of having a seizure, having an attack. But he had crossed lanes and we impacted. We hit each other. I both taken away by ambulance. Well, him by a helicopter, and me by an ambulance. And
was he injured much worse than you?
I'd say pretty much on the same level as far as recovery. He was in the hospital a little bit longer to recover. But at the same time, I had to go through a series of surgeries to reconstruct my foot and also a section here on my face. But we made it through.
And you're still looking handsome.
Thanks. Appreciate that. I have my days. I don't know.
For those who are just listening to this on the podcast, we're also filming this video as well on YouTube, so you can watch the video there as well. But continue, Mark. Okay, so then what happened?
Following this incident, I knew I was going to be going through a series of surgeries, and I had just started a couple of years back a fledgling marketing and design company. I'm a graphic designer by trade. And so knowing that there would be this process of surgeries and trying to maintain business, it kind of put me into a little bit of I was going down into a depression. And because I knew somehow, some way, there would have to be a start again to this. And then I remembered a television show that I had seen with Rick Steves when I was younger about the Camino de Santiago. And it was, I was just thinking about what do I do next? And this is something I was planning on doing with maybe my kids or something like that later on. But that kind of caused me into taking a look at this as a possible place to create as a victory mark and a victory walk for getting to the point where I could walk again.
Hold on. So, Jonathan, can you describe the moment that Mark contacted you about this crazy idea he had?
Yeah, sure. Like he was telling you, he's part of the family. I mean, he's part of my wife's family. One day we were having some time with my father-in-law and abuelita and abuelito, grandma, grandpa. So he was there at home, and he arrived from, I don't know how long. He arrived to the house after, I don't know, like many years. And
about 20 years it had been since I've been in Bolivia.
Yeah, so it was a lot. He was not there in that particular house, and that house is really significant for the family because it was the house where everyone had some nice moments when they were a child and all that. So it's really important house. And that's the abuelita or abuelito. You're going to find abuelita there. You get my point. So, I was there because I love a lot that family. So we were sharing something. I don't know if it was a birthday reunion or something. And he got there and it was like, "Who the hell are you, man?" I don't know you. I know this family, but I don't know you. So I already knew his father, Jaime, and we spent some time with him and Barbara, his mom. And she's so nice, so kind. And she was like, trying to speak in Spanish. And she was really kind with me. So I got really, really close to this part of the family. And he started talking about his father and how he was feeling and all that. And he told me, I'm thinking about doing this walking. And I knew something about this.
Okay, so had you heard about the El Camino de Santiago at that point, Mark? Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay, you knew about it.
I knew about that. But it was like...
But you've never been to Spain?
Yeah, no. I've never been there. And it was like, the trip... I said, that's really interesting for me. But we didn't talk about the project, about a documentary film or about a movie, nothing. It was just,
we're getting to know each other.
Yeah, we were starting knowing each other. And he told me, okay, so maybe I'm going to do this walking. And I said, okay, that's so interesting, babe. Okay, so it was nothing more than that. And then he started asking about what I was doing. And I also had an accident. It was not that bad, but I had, almost 2 years without working. My arms were broken and my hand, it was really, really not nice. But anyway, it was not that hard. But those ones for me were really, really difficult also. So he told me about my job, and I was telling him that I was doing some documentary films and other recordings for some other people. I was working on production at the time, and I'm still doing that. And I don't know if he thought about that. I really don't know what he thought at that moment, but he told me, would you do something like this? But that was afterwards, not that moment, right? Not the day we knew each other. It would be afterwards. He called me and he told me, I'm thinking about doing this. And I said, okay. And could you get together, have coffee or something like that? Okay. So I went to hear him out. I used to share coffees with everyone hey, we're going to have coffee time. Okay, coffee time. For me, the coffee time means that I'm going to hear somebody's issues. You get my point? I say, okay, here's my ear. That's it. You talk, I'm going to hear it. That's it. I'm not going to do anything, but I'm going to hear you out. So
and what year was this, by the way?
Sorry?
Was this in 2016?
16.
16, yeah. It was 2016.
Spring of 16.
Yeah,
Spring of 16.
And so he made you an offer that you couldn't refuse, basically. He said, hey, let's go shoot this documentary together. Let's walk El Camino de Santiago. And he said, I'm not going to just finish in Compostela. Compostela, for those who don't know, is the kind of the official ending point. But you did the extra version. You went to Murcia. There's two points in El Camino that extend a bit beyond about an extra 80, 90 kilometers extra, which adds about 2-3 days, 4 days, depending on your pace, to your journey. And how long did it take you? Where did you start El Camino de Santiago? And I know you ended in Murcia. Murcia is Muxia, and it's the right by the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes,
but where did you actually start your journey, Mark?
We began the journey in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port on the French side.
Okay.
I'm probably saying that wrong, and French people would not like the way I'm pronouncing it, but that's...
Let me, since I'm half French, Saint-Jean-Pied-du-Port.
There you go.
that place.
And then you went to Roncesvalles.
Saint-Jean. We started in Saint-Jean. And which is, through my research, the traditional starting point. And actually, the show that was done by Rick Steves, that's where he started his little show that he had done. Now, we went ahead in that first day. We crossed we went through the Pyrenees into the Basque area. And, we just...
That's a big uphill climb, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. But I was full of a lot of adrenaline. It wasn't as hard. I used to do a lot.
And your foot was doing okay, I guess?
It hurt. But
from day one?
There was always swelling involved. And I had to put a lot of, there's a topical medication that you can put on it to keep the pain. Diclofenac.
How many kilometers could you do per day, Mark, with that foot injury that you still hadn't been fully recovered, obviously?
My fully recovered was just because I needed more training. And I think what they say with the Camino is that when you do your first section, though, you get your walking legs. For me, it was kind of my walking foot included into that. And I think the first leg, if you're going to be doing I think that's called the Napoleonic route, when you go over, up and over, it's about 15 kilometers, but it's up. So that was quite a break-in for me, with both ibuprofen and the diclofenac on my foot at the same time. But I made it through.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about El Camino for those who start at Saint-Jean-Pied-du-Port. It's hard because you're out of shape. I mean, relatively, most people are kind of out of shape when they start. And it's the hardest part of the entire trail, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's baptism by fire.
It is.
Yeah, and I would say it's more than 20 kilometers. Actually, when you see the map, when you start, they give you a map and, I don't know, something that's going to help you to go through. So it's more than 25 kilometers, actually, the first day. Yeah. Yes, because you have to go up the hill and then go down until Roncesvalles, right? Yeah. So that's the place you should end up that day. The first day, that should be your first day. And that's kind of like 28 or 25 kilometers. So assuming that you're gonna go up this big hill is really tough.
So they don't have a single place to sleep at the top of the mountain, no?
You can stop at. They have one location called Orizon, right before the Virgin of Orizon.
Because the people who do El Camino Santiago, who are in their 80s, they're incredibly old people who are or other people who are just out of shape, who are doing it.
Right, and sometimes people are having to be taken down. I mean, it's paved enough just because it's such a hard route that first day. It's paved in some sections so that you can go ahead and if they need to call somebody in to bring you back down, they'll bring you back down. But for the most part, you have Orizon, which you can stop as a midway point. And if you're elderly or you're having physical problems, you can at least, stay there in the Albergue there for 1 or 2 days and then continue on over, So they have...
Okay, so then tell us a little bit about, it took about a month, would you say, to get to Murcia, or a little bit more?
We can go into that a little bit in the interview, but I think we actually got done in about 27 or 29 days. And that was because I was pushing so hard. Everybody goes through their reason while walking. Mine, there was a lot of steam coming out of my ears.
what I love about long trails, and I've done many, is that it's a time to reflect on your life. So there's a lot of people, maybe about half of the people, who are doing El Camino de Santiago, which was a pilgrimage, a Christian pilgrimage, or is a quote, and yet they're not doing it for Christianity. They're doing it for other reasons. Tell us a little about why your particular reason, what motivated you. Was it religion, Mark?
I think it was both a combination of personal hurts. It was religion or faith-based. I kind of view religion, even though I'm a practicing Catholic, I view religion and your spirituality within it as two different things. And I was also doing it because I wanted to come to terms with some of the things that were revealed to me about my dad and my own issues with forgiveness and my own that also stemming into anger. And I guess finally out of it is just to try and find the answers, to the whys and walking with him. I walked with his ashes. So yeah, for me, it was what I call now a walk of devotion. It was a devotional walk because it wasn't just me. I was trying to do it for us. And pardon me if I'm known as the crybaby amongst our Camino family. So if I get a little choked up during the interview, please, I apologize.
Yeah, no problems. I mean, it is a very emotional journey for sure. I mean, whatever the reason you're doing it, it pushes you to the limit. How was it for you, Jonathan? How were you kind of affected by the trail itself?
Look, I would divide myself in two pieces because, like I was telling you before, I was like hired to do this job. It's like, okay, you are a filmmaker or whatever, you have an idea. We are going to take an extra guy to record this with a camera, but it wasn't enough to make a recording like if we were really making a movie. You get it? I mean, this is my...
Like The Way. If for those who've seen the movie The Way, there you have a huge crew.
Yeah. I mean, you would need a crew with this. It was Mark, Alberto, it was the camera guy, and me. That actually I was making a lot of filmmaking also. I mean, footage, because the guy was not, he's not a bad guy, but it was like, sometimes he was really tired, and it was like, okay, he's really tired. So, okay, I understand, man. I totally understand you, but we need to do this. Lend me your camera. I'm going to do this. So sometimes he was like, I cannot do this. And he's a really good guy, but we are. Did
you have two cameras?
Just one.
Just one camera.
Yeah, okay, because it was really heavy. After this,
yeah, of course,
30 or 40.
No, but I thought that maybe you could shoot some B-roll with a small camera, even if it's a phone camera. Some phones shoot in 4K video.
Yes, but it was like we needed to have this footage in a really good
format.
Yeah, format, and So, this is one side. I had to record. I had to record him walking, struggling, sharing with people. It was like my main motivation being there. But of course, you cannot put apart your body issues, your hurt, your pain, your own process inside. Because I was struggling with my father's cancer also. You get me? That moment, I realized my father was with cancer, and I was really touched by that. And I said, okay, I cannot put this thing in this job. I have to be professional enough to record, and that's it. But you cannot do that. I mean, this is the other part of myself that I was going out also, So I would.
Mark,
there were moments really hard.
Mark, tell me a little bit about some of the logistical challenges you had for filming this and just doing it as a documentary. And you're trying to get into your own journey and at the same time distracted by the practical reality. And people, you can't underestimate how much time it takes to do these things. I've done it myself, so I know what I'm talking about. But go ahead and explain.
Well, I think one of the things for me that was a challenge is that there was no, it's getting used to having cameras be there. And I think the ultimate reason on why I wanted to record this, and we can even go into the reasons why later, is, I needed a sense of a memory. Most people have journals, for me, just being an artist, being from the business, there was the whys why we were doing it, which I kind of didn't know why. I just knew that I had to. And so logistically, it was hard for me, get used to having cameras around. It was a little hard to, cry in front of a camera, right. And show, raw emotion, because, eventually people are going to see this. But I always told myself they're seeing the point of a person in their life. They can't look at one person going through these things like, oh, this encapsulates the whole entire person. It was for me a critical pivot point that it was for me on this walk. And I'm just glad we did it. But that was the hardest thing logistically for me, was just knowing that, because it wasn't performance, but knowing that I could be as raw when I needed to be and not be afraid of the cameras. And within time, that did happen.
I should add that it was so hard, because you're talking about logistics. It was so hard that we fought many times. I mean, it was like, hey man, why in the hell I'm here? You get my point? Right. So
what's the story?
2 or 3 days without seeing him, and it was in the phone like, hey man, where are you? I'm struggling with my own issues. I know, but I need to record you, man. So where are you? I'll see you afterward. Bye. So I was like 2 days.
So, Mark, you went off into the woods, or where did you disappear to?
Well, this was actually what was recommended to me by somebody who walked the Camino and actually had himself recorded through his process. Is that the only way that there is a process that exists is if you have your alone time and don't have the cameras on you. And so it was recommended to me by him to be able to create what we call a jump, where John, Jonathan, and Alberto, they went ahead and did a jump. And so during those times, it allowed me to go through and experience some of the things that I needed to, which allowed me to, once the cameras were in front of me again, to be able to expose myself further and further.
So sorry, but Mark, were you walking ahead, or did you walk off the trail?
I walked ahead.
So you just kind of like steamrolled ahead, and they couldn't catch up to you because they were lugged down by their cameras and all their gear.
They would walk back, literally walk back, or they would jump back for some B-roll, and then they would come back forward and meet with me 2 or 3 days later, and then we would be all together again. But I think when they've been walking, they did backwards. I think they may have walked a little bit more than Muxia itself. They did have the trains that did help, but they did a lot of extra walking.
And that made it really interesting, because it was those moments we were not together. It was like, okay, so that made me realize this was real. So that's what we're trying to tell through this story. This is not something like we went and okay, camera, action, that's it. I mean, it was like, man, we are living this process with this guy. And we are living the same process, maybe in another situation or moment, internally talking, right? But this is the good thing about this documentary film, I think. It is honest. I mean, we try to keep it honest, because sometimes it was like, hey, I got this issue, or I got this problem. You were not there to film this. And I said, I know, but still good. Because that's the reality. I mean, that's what we are living. So that's what we are going to be able to tell me. Maybe I'm not going to see you, limping or whatever, but I'm going to ask you, and you're going to have to tell me in an interview, let's say. And while we are in the Camino, we're going to have to tell me this, and I'm going to have to believe you. Get my point? I mean, it's real.
If you guys had to do it, if you guys had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I think that, a lot of times, and I think, first of all, because it's documentary, because it's in essence real life, It's not contained like a movie or a film. We were tight on budget, and I think what I would have done is I would have not been afraid and spent the extra money on some extra equipment so that it would make John's life a lot easier.
For example,
some camera
like what equipment?
Having a gable instead of the camera shaking.
Mm-hmm.
These types of things.
Got it.
So, because people go, people, I guess in the filmmaking industry, because they're around technology, will go, oh gosh, look at that camera shake. That's, there seems to be some streaming off of the imagery. But at the same time, it's a documentary. And documentaries, people do them on cell phones now. It's okay to be imperfect because it's a documentary. But because of, I think both of our perfectionist nature when it comes to producing something, it's kind of like, God, why was I afraid? Why was I afraid of it? And that's what we think I would do different.
What advice would you give somebody who's watching or listening to this and they're thinking about doing El Camino de Santiago? What advice would you give them?
You go ahead and then I'll give my take.
You're talking about just doing the Camino, but not filming or recording or something like that?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, most people are not going to film. So just average person who wants to go off and do.
And I would apply, and I would tell them to apply is realize that this is going to be hard first. You have to know this is going to be hard. And live day by day. That's the only thing I would tell them, because when you think, okay, I'm going to prepare my body and I'm going to train and I'm going to do this, and never is going to be enough. I can assure you that never is going to be enough. You're not going to be prepared here to do the Camino. So you have to prepare here every single day. When you're going to start, you have to think that you're going to have that day to walk. And that's it. Next day, you don't know. You wait. So I would say live day by day. That's it. That's all I would say. And
what about you, Mark?
There are actually two different things. The first is if you're going to do the Camino, do it for your own reasons. And do your best to prepare yourself to be clean of anybody else's expectations. I think that for every person, it is such a personal walk. For me, there was criticism by somebody online once to me of, why are you walking with the camera? You're not going to have your authentic Camino. I, just because of the core of who I am as an artist, I needed to have that, I think, memory for myself. But at the same time, there's a side of me that said, yeah, I wonder what it would have been like to do it alone. But at that time, I was so raw that I thank God that, that there was family there. I think the second thing is, like John said, you can't really prepare yourself for the Camino. I think with all the books that are out there, they do help a little bit, but you do have to live the day by day, and you have to go at your own pace. And if you're needing to keep up with people, ask yourself, why do you need to keep up with people? Because you're there for yourself. And if it's time for them to move on at their pace, it's time for them to move on at their pace.
But what if you're going with somebody as a partner from the get-go? Let's say you're going with your spouse.
I think that there are times where if you want, it depends on the couple. There's no set answer. And that's the one thing about the Camino or even about documentaries, is that there's no set answer. You have to ask each other why you're both there. And if one gets tired, is it okay for them to go that extra mile and say, I will meet up with you a couple of days later, if you care for them enough to say, I still want you to keep moving. And then the other one may completely refuse and say, there's absolutely no way I'm not going to leave you behind. So it's personal per couple.
Speaking about personal, Mark, tell us how and when did your father die?
My accident was in early April. He died less than 90 days later. He died from kidney cancer. They had performed surgery. They did not get all of the cancer. And he developed pneumonia. And pneumonia and complications with cancer, it progressed it so quickly that he died within around 7 days.
Were you there by his bedside when he died?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. You're asking me that because you want me to talk about that a little bit. Okay. Sure. And if I'm breaking down a little bit, that's why I have my rep. My father moved from Bolivia to the United States in the 50s to create a new life for himself. He was young. He was 21 years old. And he had that opportunity. He was actually helped by one of his older brothers, which is Jonathan's, not his father-in-law, but his father-in-law's father. I think that the reasons for him leaving also had to do with his experiences. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My dad's dad used to beat my grandmother. Basically, there was times where just for the safety of my dad, caught in between this and also the other brothers having to help defend the grandmother from my grandfather. They said, let's go ahead and at least try and reset his life and get him out. And so my uncle actually helped him pay to get to the United States to go to school. And he reestablished his life there. But those pains that he had towards my grandfather really came out while he was passing.
Now, but your relationship with your father wasn't that great either. I mean, you had problems.
The problems weren't the relationship. I think the problems came from the pain of his relationships. He never beat me. He never hurt me. He would yell. He would have expectations. He would criticize. But, there's ways that he, I think, far surpassed his circumstances of what he lived in as a child. But I recognize now that a lot of those things also, he didn't have a chance to grow as well. And I think his reactions towards other people, I think you learn from your parents. And this is the thing that is passed on. This is part of those generational wounds that you pass on to a child. If he sees you yelling, if he sees you angry, if he sees you upset for days over somebody that may have done something wrong to him, you learn that this is the way to be. And then you take that into your relationships, and you can take that into to your children. And so the generational wound doesn't have to be the beatings or abuse or anything like that, even though he experienced it. Generational wounds can also come to the way you're taught and how you can even pass that anger or pass that unforgiveness and take it to the next level and take it down the generation.
So would you say, Mark, part of the purpose of going on this El Camino de Santiago, this transformative journey, which I'm a big believer in when you're going through these things, if you want to get over some issue in your life, taking a long walk is actually a fantastic way of doing that. Yeah. So was part of the purpose of doing El Camino de Santiago for you, Mark, was to get over your generational wound, or at least to heal this generational wound, as you say?
To heal it as much as I could. I think there's expectations that people want you to be fixed when you come back. And this is where I said, the expectation should be you walk it for yourself. But it was for me, not only mine, but also some things one of my children in particular are going through, and have been going through ever since the Camino 2 years ago, that I really had to make a decision for myself on how to work with this child and support them in their processes. Things that maybe my dad didn't know how to do, that I had to come to terms, even if I knew it was going to be hard. And it is still hard to this day, but that will also be revealed in the documentary. So,
did your dad want to be cremated?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and then tell us about your decision to take his ashes with you through El Camino de Santiago.
On a spiritual level, I do believe that there was, I think, a personal meaning for him being able to walk with me. I believed through the process, and I believe, because people will doubt it, that spiritually he was with me through a number of the processes that I had gone through. But at the same time, I knew that it was therapeutic for me in my heart that I'm actually physically, in some manner of way, walking with my dad. And the things that happened at his bedside when he was dying galvanized my reason from not only walking as a victory walk from getting over an accident, but that there was something deeper to be able to have to walk for, and something more devotional to have to walk for him and for me, especially with what he went through when he was dying.
Now, tell us a little bit about the process now that you're going to be doing this Kickstarter that you're going to be launching.
Sure.
Have you haven't done a final cut of the film right now? You're going to be raising, how much money are you trying to raise to complete the film? Because you got all the footage, almost all the footage, I imagine.
We have most of the footage. We have about 90% of the footage. We still have to go through a predominant amount of it is going to be used for post-editing. Obviously, a portion of it's going to be used for incentives to give people what I think are going to be, valuable incentives.
How much are you going to be aiming to raise?
$65,000. $65,000.
Okay, and it's an all or nothing thing.
Yes, it's going to be an all or nothing thing. Yes.
So if you raise $40,000, you get nothing.
Correct.
Okay, so when people pledge on Kickstarter, just be aware of that whatever you end up pledging, you may not be charged a dime if Mark is not able to raise the $60,000. And so I imagine the bulk of that, maybe 70%?
What percentage is going to go
post-production
towards final B-roll and getting over there, doing the B-roll, editing, and all the post-production with sound, everything that needs to make it to the quality of what people expect today when it comes to documentary films.
Right.
Part of it, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Continue.
Part of it, obviously, is to pay towards incentives, and then pay towards people that are involved in helping marketing it, and those types of things.
And then once the film is cut, what is your timeline of when you want to release it? Sometime November 2019, maybe?
No. I'm working with a gentleman who deals with production out of California, and he says expectations should be anytime in April of 2019. He said with the amount of footage that we have to be able to work with, he says we need to lineate this. I know what expectations I have as far as the story that needs to be told, but we need to lineate it and pull in enough of the any of the extra interviews or things that need to be done to be able to tighten this up, so that once it's cut and ready to go out the door, that it is going to be something that is going to be relevant and meaningful for people who are either dealing with generational wounds or are considering walking the Camino de Santiago, and another point of view to take from doing the Camino. So I think the one thing that does need to be said is when we went into producing this film, John, just being the director that he is like, why am I here? He said, why am I here? And I would look at him and say, I don't know. Let's just film and see what happens. Because it's, life and documentaries is kind of like, how do you lineate that? What's the final goal of the story? I felt a call to go on this walk. I felt a call to go with my father. We brought cameras along to record it for me as an artist and wanting to do something, to be artistically relevant during this time of my life. Because my dad always pushed me to follow what was in my heart. He said, your heart first. So I didn't know. I think that confused John a lot. But as things have evolved, things have come together in a pretty terrific way.
What happens if you don't raise the $60,000? You only raise $20,000, and the whole thing.
I don't
Is
know
there a
anything
plan
about
B?
that. No, I don't want to think about that. Small
and speaking about that, I mean, do you think
internet,
people
maybe, but I don't want to do it that way. I mean, you can tell the story little by little.
I'm just asking, like, because when people are thinking about doing El Camino de Santiago, for example, it's another big project, kind of like doing a documentary. In a sense, you're doing two big projects. One is walking it, and then the second thing is doing this film. Yeah. For most people, they're just doing El Camino. Right. And is it good to have a plan B when you're walking El Camino? Like, what if I don't get to Compostela? What if after 100 kilometers of hiking, I break down, or whatever, or I just get tired of this?
I think that the thing for the plan B is that sometimes things don't happen. And I think that's part of life. Mm-hmm. Things don't happen the way you want, even though you have, maybe big goals and dreams that are big for you. And if you physically are taxed and can't complete it, or maybe tragedy happens back at home and you have to leave, then at that time, it's not meant to be. But even if it's not meant to be at that time, it doesn't mean that it's over. It doesn't mean that you can't go back. Maybe it'll not be when you want it to, but it'll happen when it is, I guess, in ways serendipity is supposed to happen. The way things have developed for us in the production of this documentary, things have happened to where there has been more clarity that I'm glad I've gone through in doing this project. Then I was a complete mess during the walk. But don't hate yourself. Don't get beat up if you have to quit because of your leg or if something is pulling you back home. There's always a future. You have to have hope, and you have to have hope, which is one of the points of the documentary.
Before we go, Jonathan, tell us about what surprised you about El Camino de Santiago.
I don't know, so many things, but if I'm trying to think just about something specifically relevant.
Well, I mean, was it tougher than you expected, easier than you expected?
I think it was tougher. Yeah, I mean, I was, when we're talking about, I was a Boy Scout when I was a kid, but not enough. I mean, that's because I was telling you before. You have to think about these both sides I was telling you. One thing is your body. I mean, your health, your body, that you're going to walk, it's going to hurt. That's because you have to be prepared day by day, thinking about this. But the other side, the spiritual or internal side, I think that's the most important thing. And that's something that really amazed me because it was, the place was so beautiful. Every single day you could see another country. I mean, another place, maybe you were seeing something different. So it was really interesting for me. Every day I walked because, we had to walk anyway with the camera, whatever, we had to do it. So it makes me alive that it was so beautiful to walk. I mean, the place, it was so beautiful. These views you had and all that, it was wonderful. But something happened inside for me also, and it was, I know I was recording something or there to do a job or whatever, but I couldn't stop thinking that it was really blessed being there for me. So I realized that I was there because of something, and I started thinking about that moment. And like I was telling him, why am I here? I don't know, but I'm going to know afterwards, maybe. So when I went there was no expectations about that. I had to do my job. That's it.
Was it hard when all of a sudden you're seeing, let's say, Mark, your cousin, basically having a breakdown and crying and being frustrated, and there you're trying to film him, and part of you probably wants to comfort him. And part of you wants to say, hey, but I mean, as a filmmaker, you just have to keep rolling the film.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. It was hard because sometimes it was like, okay, man, I mean, it's not time to cry, man. I mean, talk to me. I mean, it's not time to cry. But then you think, like you're telling me, right? I mean, man, this is not a character. And that's something really clear that we talk afterwards. this is not a character. This is not Hollywood, right? I mean, this is real life. So that was really hard. I mean, I was like, okay, am I going to record him or not? He's crying or he's really touched or he's really, I don't know if I'm going to record or not. And then I said, I have to record. I mean, we are here.
Of course. Those are the best parts of any film, especially documentary, are the emotional parts.
Yes, that was really nice. And it was like, okay, man, you're going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay, but we have to record. Go ahead. Yeah, but it was really interesting and it was awesome. It was really good.
You know, the one thing when he was mentioning about the emotional side of it, and I think I would have mentioned this also when it kind of comes to preparing yourself, is people have now divided the Camino into sections, and they divided it into the body, the mind, and the spirit. Like the body is for your first leg. The mind ends up being the meseta, which can be a very long area to walk, and that's when you're on the carousel thinking of all the problems in your life. That's just the physical. And then the spiritual being when you hit Galicia and most people have gone through a certain amount of things and you start to connect. I think what people think that they have to live up to that, and this is what I'm talking about, expectations. I was such a combination of all three of them through the whole process through. Even to the point to where, the one thing I'll tell you about what happened is, the priest, even though I had chosen Muxia as the place to let my dad's ashes go, the priest saw how messed up I was. I had gone to confession and he's like, you're not done yet. You need to keep going. And he mentioned Muxia first. So, I mean, Muxia is a place.
So you were going to be going to Compostela. You were going to end it there. But then you've talked with Reverend Philip Scott and he told you keep going?
No. I can talk a little bit about Father Philip here in a second. But when you go into Compostela and you go into the cathedral, there's like these confessional booths that are like open face, the face of his confessional is like kind of like the Coney Island lady, it's just face, and you're looking around going, oh my gosh, I need to talk about this stuff with people around. But I went ahead and knelt and went through the ritual and started talking with him, and he could see how torn up I still was. And he grabbed me by my hand and pulled me in. And he said, your journey's not done here yet. You need to keep going, and you need to go to Muxia, and then go to Finisterre.
And that's the name of the film, The Road to Muxia. By the way, I'm going to give a tip to both you and to people who are listening or watching to this. When it comes to Kickstarter projects, one thing that's consistent is that they always deliver later, almost always. I think about 80% of projects, maybe 90% of projects deliver later. So even though you think you can get it done in April 2019 and have it released into the customer's hands by then, I would promise November. because and by the way, I know you hate, but just, it doesn't, who's going to get mad at you, Mark or Jonathan, for saying, hey, we're 3 months early?
Exactly.
Is anybody going to get angry at you?
Right.
Nobody's going to get angry at you. So you just say, internally, you guys shoot for April, and then you've got the November official, and if you get it to people's hands 5 months earlier, everybody's happy. But it's incredible. And this goes also for the people listening or watching this.
Yeah.
When you participate in a Kickstarter project, whatever the organizers and the people who are doing the Kickstarter tell you, think this could be delayed another 6 months or another year, and be okay with that, because I see people who support projects and get furious because you promised me I was going to get this gadget in April and it's a year late and da. So both sides need to kind of push back this time, because it's such a common thing. Even with my project, when I did a Kickstarter, even I was a few months late and I felt terrible and I thought I was being conservative. Anyway, it's my tip to both of you. So,
yeah.
How do people find out about the project and the Kickstarter? If they just search for Road to Muxia?
Yeah, they can go to Facebook. They can query in Road to Muxia. They'll go to the Facebook page, Facebook and website, or How We're Driving.
Okay, and we'll spell it out. Muxia is
Yes, Road to Muxia. The website is muxiafilm.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that has all the links to, and that will have the links also to the Kickstarter, which will last for, it's probably 2 months, I think you said?
Yes, it's going to be up for 60 days. I'd like to hit the algorithm, and we've been building a buzz and building a community for the past couple of years. So we're hoping that it will be one of those projects that can go high on the algorithm and can get funded in a week, but we'll see. Everybody swings for the.
By the way, I mean, I read a lot about it. I mean, obviously you've picked your 60-day date, but I've read a lot of people saying that it's 30 days is the optimal, that you actually raise more money because you create the sense of urgency and all this other stuff. But you guys go and you decide what you want to decide. But I remember 30 days was a long time. It felt like when I was doing my Kickstarter, it was like, wow, this is taking, it's going forever. And 60 days is a real marathon. Yeah. So, and the question is whether you'll be able to raise more or less. You might raise the same amount if you just push it all for 30 days. Anyway, but that's just me giving random advice.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah. We'll take it. Now you have us thinking on our side. And you mentioned one person, and it's something I do want to explain about the documentary. You mentioned Father Philip Scott. He is a Peruvian-born priest that was raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and a lot of people within the community have wondered, is this going to be a religious film? Because they see this, this gentleman, this friar who looks like a 13th century monk, with his big beard and whatnot in some of the clips that we have online. My Catholicism is my experience. I struggle every day. When people say they're Catholic, they expect them to be perfect. I struggle every day, man. And I think that I've known the guy for close to 25 years, and he chose the priesthood over being a graphic designer. So we have the creativity and the backgrounds of design and things like that were in common. Very earthy guy, very upfront guy. But for me, it has been his dialogue that has helped me through a number of my processes, plus my own exploration on how to deal with the things that we're dealing with when it comes to generational wounds. It is not a Catholic film. It hits nobody's gone. It is about an internal journey and a generational journey. My generational journey, because a lot of movies will talk about the Camino as the present, but I think where I'm trying to help myself and hopefully in some way help others is talking about something deeper that causes people to get there and say, to where I was so raw and confused going through this, they can maybe have some time ahead of time to figure out a few things for themselves before they do that walk. Because I think their walk will be much more relevant for them if they do that, instead of ending up there as a basket case, kind of like I did, and going through everything. So, yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Good advice. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure talking with both of you. And I wish you the best for your launching of the Kickstarter project and for journeys beyond that.
Thank you so much, Francis. You take care.
It was good to talk to you, man.
Tell Rejoice we say hello.
Likewise. Okay, thank you. And that concludes this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel technology and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we talked about, or if you'd like to comment on the show, or if you'd like to ask me a question, then go to WanderLearn.com and click on the latest episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is the username I use on all social media. You can also get to my website by going to ftapon.com. Here's one last reason to remember Tapon. If you like what I do and want to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ yep, you guessed it, ftapon. That's where you can pick up some sweet rewards for as little as $1 a month. And remember, subscribing to the WanderLearn podcast helps, but downloading each episode helps even more. Please share the podcast, review it, and sign up for my newsletter at WanderLearn.com. This show was edited by Rejoice Tapon. The music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.